Hello and welcome back. I was going to start talking right away about the video, but I just noticed how fresh the air smells. Like there's a real change in the season now, and you can smell it. So this video is going to be more targeted towards people who have already been on the spiritual path. Some of the stuff you might not be able to understand right away, or how to do what it is that I'm talking about. For some of you, it might pique your curiosity enough to start looking deeper inside yourself. For others, it'll be a reminder. Maybe it's something you haven't done in a while, or thought of, or allowed. And that is the practice of liberating thoughts and their power, its ability to recenter you. And truly, if people would only practice this one thing, could learn this one art of simply liberating thoughts. And when I say liberating, I mean letting go. If one could learn the art of letting go thoughts, not holding on to them, then nothing could really bother you more than a short time, maybe. Because the minute you are able to liberate a thought or a string of thoughts attached with an emotional identity, an emotional sense of personalness that's related to the thought, once a person can let that go, everything seems as though it's right again. Everything seems as though everything is okay. You kind of feel almost like you want to laugh at how seriously you took it. It's as though you put your own head under the water and you didn't realize you could just pull your head out, and then you, by accident, pull your head out and realize the power that you had within you all this time. It's truly that transformational. It's truly that powerful, the art of liberating thoughts. It's like learning to flex a new limb, a new muscle. It's not something a person can easily do if they don't already, or have already learned how, or I should say, if they have learned to do the opposite of liberating thoughts, but instead to hold on to thoughts. If the majority of your whole life you spent following a certain thought and feeling personal and just not being able to let it go, then this might be difficult for you to do, and the thought of doing it might even be overwhelming, too overwhelming, just that in itself. A person cannot explain how to liberate a thought. I can't give you a technique. I can say stuff like return your attention to the moment. I can say stuff like go into your physical body, your senses. I could say stuff like listen to the sounds around you. I could say feel the sun on your skin. But all of those things are not ultimately the ultimate liberation of a thought. They are only a distraction from the thought. And oftentimes, in that distraction comes this recognition that a thought never was more than a passing thing. All of a sudden you recognize, because all of a sudden you recognize that the thought doesn't really have any power over you, because a second ago it was personal, it felt negative, you didn't want it, and now you're focusing on how nice the sun feels, or just the feeling of the sun in general, and that personal nature of the thought is gone. So you see how simple it is of a technique to do, and it's not really a technique, but by going into the body, by going into the present moment, it's as though you create a doorway. You create the door, and if you can, you walk through the door. Sometimes it's easier to walk through the door than others, but creating the door for you to walk through is always extremely simple. By going into the now, the moment. Liberating thoughts happens on its own, and it's when you recognize that you're free from the thought that it empowers you to figure out exactly what it is that you just did. As I mentioned earlier in the video, it's like learning to use a new limb, a new arm, and in the same way that when you try to pick something up, sometimes you might, if you've never used that hand before, you might accidentally grab it and start lifting, and all of a sudden you don't have the motor controls that that you need to hold on to it for too long, and you accidentally drop the cup again. And in that same way, very much the same way, when it comes to liberating thoughts, oftentimes you can create the door by using something like sound, and then when you go to reach to open the door and walk through the door seems to slam shut in front of you, and you're back into your thoughts again. So it takes practice. And that's why I say I can't really give this to you. No one can give you the ability to liberate a thought in the same way that a baby needs to learn to walk by himself. No one tells a baby how to walk. He simply watches. He has this urge in him to do what he sees. It's obvious to him. He sees other people do it. He looks down and he starts trying to do it without the mind, without trying to figure out how. A baby learns to use his hands and picks up objects without asking you, well, how do I do that? Instead, the baby just tries and tries and tries and tries until he's successful. And eventually, it becomes a second nature. Using the body, we don't think of it anymore. We just do it. And liberating thoughts is exactly that same process that a person needs to go through. It's not something that you bring the mind in and use when it comes to letting thoughts go. It's something you just do. There's a beautiful quote from Star Wars when Yoda said, "Do not think, just do. There is no try. Just do." I might have quoted that wrong, but there is no try, just do. And in that same way, that's how a person liberates a thought. You don't try to do it, you simply do it. And a very important thing to mention is that you don't also try to stop thinking, because that's impossible. Instead, you just bring your attention away from the thought processes that naturally occur as energy flows in and through the body, through the brain. These synapses and all these electrical currents are just firing, and creating images and thoughts inside the mind. So you're not trying to stop your brain from working and doing what the brain does. Instead, you're just redirecting your attention away from it and allowing it to be there. And that's a huge key, because if you try to stop thinking, the thinking becomes louder. Anything you resist persists. Anything you resist persists. It'll stay. Oftentimes it'll intensify. So liberating a thought takes practice. And in moments, you'll feel, I got it. And then you're lost in your thoughts again. It's extremely important not to be discouraged and to recognize that effort and practicing is progress. Whether it feels as though you're progressing in the moment or not. Whether it feels as though you're going back, stepping back, or stepping forward. And remember, a lot of times, progress is 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So when you're stepping back, what it feels like in your progression to liberating yourself from thoughts, when you feel like you're stepping back, it's okay. Giving yourself a hug goes a long way. Reassuring yourself that this is okay. It's okay. It's really okay. Can really help you. And sometimes learning to just rest. You don't need to beat yourself up and constantly be at yourself, trying to liberate yourself from thoughts, because you had these small moments where you felt the freedom of it and you just want that more and more. In the very wanting of more is the creation of misery right there. And in just the accepting of it as it is and being able to even look past the thought of wanting it more is true liberation from your thoughts. Because every thought that comes in, especially the ones that say, I want more of this, are the very thoughts that will keep you in bondage, the very thoughts that will create the prison from which you think you need to escape. There seems to be 2 aspects inside of us. One that wants the freedom from that misery that the mind can create, and one that wants to put us in a cage and keep the perpetual cycle of misery going. Sometimes it feels like you can't, sometimes it feels like you can. And it's hard to recognize when you're in one side or the other that both can be. The ultimate goal is not to always be free from your thoughts, and the ultimate goal is not to always be free from your thoughts, and you have to realize that you're not going to always be trapped in your thoughts either. And it's that cycle of back and forth, that liberating your thoughts, the true sense, you free yourself from that whole cycle. Because when you're stuck in this back and forth, that is also thinking with a sense of me. That's happening. So this cycle needs to be dropped as well. You need to liberate yourself from that as well. And you can only liberate yourself from this back and forth by not trying to liberate yourself from that anymore. Now, these sort of things are steps that you will reach along your path. You'll get to a certain step and you'll say, oh, okay. And you just need to really practice and go through the ups and downs and cycles within you to recognize for yourself. So a lot of the stuff that I'm saying here, as you're trying for yourself to liberate your thoughts, you're going to say, wow, I remember Danny saying that this is exactly what I'm experiencing right now. And oh wow, I see that struggle, and how do I do this? Well, remember that a baby never asks how to keep holding onto a glass. He just keeps trying until it becomes second nature. So I leave you with that. Wherever you are around the world, whatever time it is that you're watching this video, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's so beautiful out here. Happy practicing. Peace.